Hello and welcome to the Journeys with PDA Coffee Chat podcast, where we seek community connection and co-regulation while chatting about all things PDA. Hello everybody, welcome to Journeys with PDA Coffee Chat podcast. I'm Heather.
And I'm Kerissa. And today we're going to be talking about autism as a dynamic disability. And right away, first off, as we jump into this topic, I think it's really important to start out by what do we mean by disability? We're talking about a disability, being disabled. And while we value individuals and we value the person and just who they are. So Heather, how does that all tie in together as we are talking about disability?
Disability. That's a really, really good question, Kerissa. So disability, we're using it in the context of, again, autism being a dynamic disability. And there are camps on whether or not we should use the describer disability or we shouldn't. And before we started recording, Kerissa and I kind of had this conversation about why we feel it's important to use the word disability when we're talking about this. And it's my opinion that because autism is an invisible disability, we need to keep using that word in conversation so that people who are not so familiar with this topic understand that, yes, autism is a disability and an invisible disability. And sometimes it is difficult not to expect neuronormative things from somebody who is autistic.
Yeah, so also I think about the word disability. So it's a lower ability, like a disadvantage into your ability. And so to me, that means the world and the system and the things that have been put into place, the way that they're set is that an autistic person is at a disadvantage or at a lower ability to be able to do the things that are expected in just the world, the workplace, school, the store. And to me, that's where disability, the disadvantage. And so when we're looking at autism, we are trying to bring attention to the fact that you're disabled because you can't meet the expectations of the world as it is without some accommodations or support. And the importance of realizing that autism, as well as so many other chronic illness or just other type of brain differences, ADHD, those will change and fluctuate based on so many different factors. And so that's really what we want to talk about today, is how it is very dynamic and you are at a disadvantage because the world's just not set up for an autistic brain.
No, it is not. So let's dive right into some terminology here. We've already said that autism is a dynamic disability. So what would be the opposite of a dynamic disability? It would be a static disability. So a static disability would be something that is viewed as unchanging and fixed over time. It's going to be the same today as it is tomorrow, as it was last week, as it will be in 5 years from now. In contrast, we have the word dynamic. And that word recognizes that abilities and challenges can change and evolve. And it's influenced by personal, social, environmental factors. And when we, and I say we, when our community, when the neuronormative community um, can see that autism is dynamic, it will allow for more holistic understanding of the autistic individual's experience.
Yes. Yes.
Um, so, what is meant by a dynamic disability? I found an article, and it is from the Queen Mary Academy, 2021, and the article was Advice for Teaching Students on the Autism Spectrum. And they quoted a young lady who is autistic, and she goes by the handle neurodiversity unbroken. I had to make sure I said her name right. And she has 10 global reasons that explain why autism is a dynamic disability. And we're going to take each one of them and talk about it briefly, so that we can get a bigger picture, a more complete picture of why this is a dynamic disability. So the first factor that she says is environment. And when we think about environment, there are so many places that human beings are expected to exist in the world. And some of those environments are the home, we have the school, we may have social outings such as shopping, we may have social outings as entertainment, and we may have environments which are where we would go to practice our religion. And depending on how we are supported in each environment will determine the way that we are able to access that environment. For example, if I'm at home and I am being very well supported and I have the accommodations that I need at home, I have the right sensory supports, I am allowed as much autonomy as able as, safety and healthy, or safety and health allows. My nervous system is going to be more regulated when I have what I need. I have the sensory supports, I have the accommodations. If I want to eat chicken nuggets and French fries every day, that's perfectly fine. Now let's take that same situation, but now I am expected to go into my school. Now, I may have an IEP, and the IEP may read that I have certain, accommodations, modifications, but there's still a lot more going on at school. We have many, many more people. I have to adhere to a schedule. Perhaps I have to eat lunch there, and I don't have a choice of my lunch. My autonomy is less than it would be at home. And therefore, my bandwidth to be able to do what I need to do to be successful in school will be much, much lower. My executive functioning won't be quite where it needs to be, because there's 30 kids in the class that I'm in, and I'm expected to follow a morning routine of, come in, unpack my backpack, turn in my homework, make my lunch choice, go sit on my spot or start my morning work. Well, I may not be able to access that part of my brain that allows for that smooth executive functioning, because now my brain is trying to accommodate for all the sensory input that is happening. The same thing would happen perhaps at like a mall. If you still have malls in your community, I know they're a dying thing. But if you think about all of the steps that it takes to go and shop, the sounds, the smells, the sensations, um, it takes a lot more bandwidth, a lot more spoons to be able to accomplish that. Same thing if we're going for amusement. Same thing if we are going to a place of worship.
Yeah. So thinking of that, and like real life for us, my son is very talkative. He's very creative. He's very funny. He makes jokes. He like tells me long, really fantastic stories. He can explain things in really great detail. If we go to the grocery store, if we go to church, he loses all ability to speak. He can't even give a yes or no answer. And so that's that dynamic part of I can do something, but I can't do something. And that the reason why it changes or shifts is actually the environment.
Right.
It's not that he suddenly can't. It's not that. It's more than. It's not that he's nonverbal or that he can't speak, right? So that would be something that is constant or stays. But the fact that depending on the environment, depending on maybe the people around, that impacts his ability to communicate, and that is part of that dynamicness. One huge comment that we hear all the time is, well, they were able to do whatever thing yesterday. They did that last week. Oh, well, they can do that at home, or they do that thing at school just fine. So why aren't they doing it here? Why aren't they doing it now?
Right. And we expect, the global we, when we are in, when we're in educational environments, the goal is to have a steady improvement, a steady gain, right? So if I can unpack my backpack today and check all the boxes that my IEP reads, saying that I will independently unpack my backpack, but the next day I have a substitute teacher and nobody gave me any front loading about having a substitute teacher, and today I cannot unpack my backpack. So does that mean I'm unsuccessful at unpacking my backpack if that is my goal? It's that's not it at all. My brain has now decided to use the energy to digest the fact that my regular teacher's not going to be there, and it's no longer able to access that higher part of my executive functioning part.
Right.
Does it
Right.
mean I can't? No, it doesn't mean I can't. It just means in that moment I can't, because my brain is doing other things for survival.
And so I think one reason why you and I really care about dynamic disability, and why this is important for us is because what we see happen a lot is in this whole backpack scenario that we're talking about is you have an autistic PDA child who gets to school and they don't have their regular teacher, they didn't know, and so things are different, and now they can't unpack the backpack for all I just stated. But what happens is that's when things like they're being defiant, they're being lazy, they're being manipulative, they're being naughty, they're trying to get attention, and that's when we start to see those things come up. And so that's why it's so important to me that people hear
Right.
this.
And so those are the observations that people, the adults, or even the peers are seeing in the manifestation. That's what it looks like. The manifestation of the disability looks like to them, where that's not what it all is, what is happening in the autistic person's brain. The autistic person's brain
Exactly.
is simply trying to survive. They're simply trying to make sense of what's going on, and trying to, in that, when they're trying to do that, they're losing they're losing the connections to the executive functioning parts of their brain.
Right, right. And a big part of this as well is you get into that part of being autistic where sometimes you can't fully understand or put a word to what it is that you're feeling
Right.
inside of your body, or why is your mind racing, or why can't you remember all of the steps.
Mm-hmm.
And so that child can't be like, oh, well, I feel really discombobulated because my regular teacher isn't here, and so now I have maybe uncertainty
Right.
inside. They
And then if I
can't.
have another goal that reads, I will appropriately ask for help, then what is appropriate at that point? Is it the outward expression of being, quote unquote defiant? That would be the only way I can ask for help,
Right,
right?
right.
I'm not able to raise my hand. And I cut you off, Chris, and I
Oh,
apologize.
no, you didn't. You jumped in just perfect. But
Okay.
but I think it is really important to understand that in the dynamicness of this, it can be very, very difficult for an autistic person to understand within themselves why something has become challenging. Um, Sometimes I know. So I know absolutely for a fact that I lose just about everything within me in the grocery store.
Oh.
I know that about myself, and I've learned
Mhm.
exactly why. I know which pieces to that make it so incredibly difficult for me. And so I get into a grocery store, it's like my eyeballs stop working, right? And then like you have to try and like maneuver a really large, heavy cart, so that it's like those, then it's motor skills and all of the planning and being able to map out this store. What are the steps? Read the list, check it off, look for things. Also, like, how do you actually socially interact with the people around, right? So there's so much going on. But for me, the only thing that my brain can like think about is the temperature, which is always way too cold for me. It is always, always way too loud. Um, the motion, just like the general motion around me, like so many different parts and pieces moving around, and the smells. And so, like, right off the bat, I walk into the door and my senses are so completely overwhelmed that I lose all executive functioning. My processing speed goes to like zero. And so not like I can't do it. I can't.
Thank
How
goodness for ordering online and
so
pickup.
so that's that thing is then when this dynamicness comes in, there are things that can be done. Like you can do things so that I still need food. So how can I still get food? The other thing is, I absolutely love Hobby Lobby or TJ Maxx. Those are my favorite stores, right? So I cannot go into Walmart and get groceries, but I could have the time of my life in Hobby Lobby.
And people are they're probably going, but how, why does it work in Hobby Lobby but it doesn't work in Costco?
Right. Oh, Costco. Oof. No, like Costco is like my ultimate kryptonite. I don't, but the Walmart where I live is like it's so big. I just like would crawl up on a ball and just lay on the floor and cry in Costco. But
But let's talk about why it works in Hobby Lobby. Or
yeah,
yeah,
it's
go ahead.
um this is a great example because yeah, why is one store and not
Mhm.
one? So it really has to do for me specifically so much with the sensory experience, and expectations.
Mhm.
What am I expected to do when I go into the grocery store? But what am I expected to do when I go into Hobby Lobby? Like, what are those pressures? What are those expectations? Um, what kind of processing capacity am I expected to have in the two different environments?
Right. So like in a grocery store, it's more like a mission.
Right.
That's how I feel. It's a mission. Like, okay, do. But in some place like Hobby Lobby, it's more of an experience of serotonin, of dopamine. You're not expected to, at least, you know, it's a pleasurable experience. You get to just do what you want to do. Go up and down every aisle.
Yes.
Take in everything.
Yes. The
It's not a
pace. The
mission.
the pace is different.
Right.
So I'm not expected to do anything quickly or make
Right.
quick decisions. Um, and like there are so many interesting or enjoyable things that are going on in Hobby Lobby, for example, that it kind of helps you to be calm. And because also if I am on a mission in Hobby Lobby, it I also can like, okay, well, I've had enough and I'm probably only here to get one or two things, and then I can just leave. But if you're in the grocery store, you have a very serious mission that has to be completed in a specific way. Like you have to get the things, and I always in the grocery store mess up and get the wrong stuff, always. And I'm like, I can't read the label, my eyeballs
Right.
won't work.
Oh my gosh, this just unlocked a memory. I was an adult before I realized that spices are in alphabetical order, as well as soup and vitamins. An adult. Like, like not even like, okay, she turned 18, now we're technically adult. I'm talking like probably late 20s.
But you know what's tricky with the spices? And that like this really gets into this dynamic part is that they might be in alphabetical order, but if there's 2 or 3 different types of
Brands.
brands,
Yeah.
each brand is in its own
Mm-hmm.
order.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's kind of like, it's like, we always talk about the, life rules, the life playbook and stuff. That page obviously was missing out of my shopping rule book. Like, I just think about how much time has been spent in Heather's life trying to find the right spice or the right vitamin, and hey, it's in alphabetical order.
Right, right.
Right.
So another huge factor, and this is a huge factor, I think, as an adult, but it's slightly easier to maybe comprehend, but impossible for a child to understand, is how does tiredness and fatigue impact your ability to complete tasks or your executive function. And so I think that's a big piece to talk about.
Yeah. In fact, it kind of goes right into the next kind of heading here, and it has to do with cognition. And cognition is the cognitive processes that are mental operations that the brain performs to process information. It stores it analyzes it in order to make relevant decisions, and their influence on behavior makes them indispensable when it comes to adapting to social context as well as to survival. Now, if we put that idea of cognition into what Kerissa just brought up, if I am exhausted, if I have been to school all day long, I have maybe remembered to unpack my backpack in the morning, and maybe I was able to access my executive functioning parts of my brain to actually pack up to go home. And I remembered my homework, and now I'm at home and I'm exhausted. Am I able to access the parts of my brain that are going to help me through these mental operations to be able to complete my homework?
Yeah. Or even something like unload the dishwasher, take out the garbage, right? So you get home from school and then you have chores. Depending on the day and how tired you are, is going to really impact your ability to maybe be able to do those things.
Right. Yep. And that goes into, that even goes into processing capacity. Like, processing capacity is the limited number of items or tasks that can be processed at one time, or that we can attend to at one time, or we are aware of at one time. And if we are mentally and physically fatigued, we're not going to have that processing capacity that we would have if we weren't tired.
Right.
Right. So, we have to, and if you throw ADHD into this as well, your processing capacity goes down significantly, because now you're trying to filter out all of this stimulus from the environment.
Mm-hmm.
And that also contributes to mental fatigue. So now
Right.
let's try to do our homework on top of that.
Right.
When we have tired parents coming home from work.
Yes, exactly. So a good example of that in my life is I go to the grocery store and I'm on my mission, and it takes like every single
Mission
molecule.
Impossible. That's
Yes, it takes every single molecule within me to be able to complete this whole task. And, like, a huge portion of my life, I also was bringing along two little kids who
Mm-hmm.
are also trying to process, the grocery store. And so not only am I trying to keep myself together, but I'm trying to keep them together and complete this mission. And what I would find is I would get home, I could get most of the groceries put away, like at least the cold. And what would happen is like my fatigue would take over all cognitive
Mm-hmm.
ability, and I would have to actually lay down and take a nap. I would actually have to sleep because I had nothing left. And think about being that tired and coming home from school and then being asked to do homework, do chores, do take a shower. Think that you're like, my brain, like the wheels aren't even
Right.
going anymore. And so then you have a child who they don't know why the wheels in their brain stopped. And so then you have a child then who goes back into the panic, and they're crying, and they're telling you no, and they're refusing to do what you're asking. And then it jumps back into that, well, on Friday you
Yeah. It was, yeah.
you did it,
Mm-hmm.
you came home from school and you unloaded the dishwasher on Friday, why aren't you gonna do it today? And that was because maybe Friday is fun day at school and they got to run around and play basketball.
Mm-hmm.
So like that cognitive drain was different. So they still had fuel left when they got home, but now it's Monday and they had a spelling test and a math test. And so now they can't. And now then there's this frustration of like, you did it before and you won't do it now. And then we get back to that PDA piece of that perceived, this child is defiant, this child is naughty. And it's not about an attitude, it's not about being naughty, it's about the cognitive ability that has now been completely drained out.
Right. And now on Friday, that part, being asked to unload the dishwasher did not trigger a fight flight response in my brain. But today it is, because I have no spoons left. I don't have the cognitive energy to break down, okay, is unloading the dishwasher a threat to my survival? My brain is going automatically to yes, and therefore my brain is going to protect myself in any extreme way possible. And you're going to have that avoidance that looks
Right.
like defiance.
Right. So then just talking about, let's look at it from a parent's perspective, right?
Hmm.
And so now I have a child who Friday they unloaded the dishwasher. Now it's Monday. We're in like a full meltdown. They're crying. And I'm going to now absorb the idea of autism as a dynamic disability. What am I going to do now? What can I do to support this child? What am I going to do or put into our lives so that we're not going to have that Monday meltdown?
So has the meltdown already started? Because
Well,
that will be how I approach this question will be dependent on what exactly is going on.
so
Like,
how could
so
people take the theory of dynamic disability
okay, so okay, so
and apply it to their lives
okay,
so that
so
they don't
on Monday,
have
if on Friday, I think first accepting that this is a dynamic disability, and then being very in tune with your child. Very,
Yes.
very in tune with your child. And knowing that Friday, hey, I was able to unload the dishwasher, but I saw on my, perhaps my parents saw on my schedule today for my agenda at school or whatever that I had 2 tests. I'm not going to ask my mom's not going to ask me to unload the dishwasher. My mom might say, boy, you had a lot to do today. We're just, go ahead, spend another, go ahead, go do what you need to do to regulate, and I'm going to unload the dishwasher today. So you're going to take things off of your child's plate. You're going to accommodate them more on the days that they're going to have a higher energy.
Draw.
Thank you. Yeah, yeah, that's how, being very, very in tune and realizing this is not something they are purposely
Yes.
choosing to do. There's no choice in this. Like, so if we go back to an example in my real life, I had some family over for dinner a couple months ago, and we catered it. So, we ordered pickup, but there was a lot of food. So as I was trying to get, and we were going to serve it family style, as I was getting all the food laid out, the plates, the napkins, I stood there with like serving utensils in my hands, and I literally had no idea what to do with them. You know why? Because I had spent the whole day cleaning because we were having guests over, and I was done. My brain was done. And I'm standing there, and it was my dad, my stepmom, and my aunt from like, and I'm like, I don't know what to do. And my husband very gently took the utensils, kind of gently guided me out of the way, and he started putting the utensils in the food for me. I mean, how hard is it to put utensils in the food? But in that moment, my brain was doing all of these mathematical equations about which utensil needed to go in which dish. Does this one need a slotted spoon? Do we need a bigger spoon over here? Do we need a fork for this one? Or do we need, and it was paralyzing.
Yes. Yeah. And
Paralyzing.
so putting this into like kind of the context of parenting, if as a parent I came up and I was like, what are you doing? Like, why can't you do this? Was that going to make it?
No, I mean, if my husband had asked me, Heather, what the hell is wrong with you? I would have lost my poo poo.
Right.
I would have snapped and lost it.
Right.
And the fact that my husband accommodated me in a very gentle, non-judgmental, just he took over for me.
Mm-hmm.
And we joked about it later, because it is, I mean, some of this stuff is funny. I mean, it is, but had there had been my fight response would have just been immediate.
Exactly. And if me in that situation, I would have just broken down in tears, and I would have gone to more of a internalized or like shut down state. I would have cried.
I always say there's no flight in me. I know nothing of flight. I'm all fight. Like,
Right.
but that's
And
just, yeah.
and so thinking, a lot about our autistic children, and our PDA kids, sometimes we hear like, well, they just freaked out for no reason.
Right.
And it's like, no, whoa.
Right?
Like,
Yeah, it's because I was doing mathematical equations in my head to try to figure out which utensil needed to go into which dish.
yes.
Right?
And so,
Yeah. And
there was a reason.
yes,
There's a reason, and it all comes back into that dynamicness of being autistic.
right.
You had other people in your home. You had been busy during that day. The biggest factor for me is always sensory overwhelm. Always. So if my sensory of wherever I'm at, if it's like off kilter, then I start to lose skills, abilities.
Yeah.
And so then when I am crying, and it's like, why are you, like, what's the big deal? Why are you crying? Like, there is a reason.
Right. Right. My crying would have come later. There would have been crying involved. It just would have come much later. We've already talked a lot about executive functioning being a component of this being a dynamic disability. But, you know, when Chris and I work with schools, or we work with families who've asked us to come in and help schools kind of understand this whole PDA autistic thing, right? Many times we see in IEPs or 504s that, so and so will do this independently. So and so will unpack their backpacks independently. Or we'll see words like with fading supports. Those aren't appropriate. Those are not appropriate goals. We won't go into we're not going to rehash what we've already talked about. But if you think about it, fading supports is not appropriate, because there's going to be some days I can do it and some days I can't. Another component about the dynamicness of this is anxiety.
Oh.
And if we have that threat response constantly activated in our brain, and that is where all of our mental energy is going, and our brain is just trying to keep us alive and survive, being asked to take care of the dishes is probably not the best. It That's not the time when we are in a highly anxious state.
Right. Exactly. And I think that a big part of what makes anxiety kind of mysterious to those that don't have a lot of anxiety is, for me, what I perceive as being expected of me, or what I am required to do, drives so much of my anxiety. So being able to get through the grocery store and not forgetting or messing up any of the things I need, or like not smashing my cart into anything, those are expectations that I perceive. And when I feel like my brain is not working in a way to meet these expectations, then I am in that really, really heightened anxiety. And then I'm in that fight or flight. And so what expectations are we maybe putting on a child at school or at home or ourselves that is going to heighten the anxiety?
Mm-hmm.
And that is a huge piece of PDA. And those are those super tricky internal demands. Is what do I perceive as a demand and an expectation? Even if you didn't say it, what am I perceiving? And now my anxiety is going up.
Right. And, when you're talking about that, the perception of anxiety, there's also different perceptions of, like what is going on. We've been talking a lot about external things, but what about the things that are going on inside of us? That introception where, we can't, it's there is research, and it's very well known in the autistic community, in the autistic world, that we have a difficult time with introception.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we, you know, we can't tell the sensation in our body. Are we hungry? Are we thirsty? Do we need to go to the bathroom? What is our heart rate? Um, you know, there's just all kinds, and then not being able to put a word to what's going on, and then you're having all of these things, you know, going on inside of your body. Maybe I'm very, very thirsty, but I can't, I just can't connect it. And somebody's asking me to unload the dishwasher. What's going to happen then? I'm
Right.
thirsty.
Right.
I can't figure out that I'm thirsty. And now somebody's asking me to unload the dishwasher.
It,
It's going to look
yes.
ridiculous. It's going to look completely like not it wouldn't match. Like, we're just asking somebody to unload a dishwasher. They have a huge, blow up, meltdown, panic attack. And it's not about unloading the dishwasher. It's about the fact that I'm thirsty, but I can't figure out that I'm thirsty.
It, oh, so much. And that's such a good example of we talk to people a lot and they're like, yeah, but we're lowering the demands.
Mm-hmm.
We're not asking that much of them. I just invited them to unload the dishwasher. Yes, those are good, but are you considering that they are thirsty and need to pee and they can't even understand what's going on in their body because it just hurts and they don't know why, and so they don't have the
Right.
ability to say, I can't do this right now, but maybe I could do it later. Also, one of the big things that has to do with this is when someone says, well, just tell me what you need.
Right?
And I'm like, I don't have any, I have no idea what I need. I don't even know why my heart's racing right now. Well, maybe I am dehydrated.
Right.
Maybe I'm really nervous about whatever coming up. Maybe my brain is just too slow right now. I don't know what I need. And you asking me, even with all of the kindness and good intentions in your heart, when you go, well, just tell me what you need and I'll do it. And I'm like, I feel like lying down on the floor and crying is probably what I need right now.
Right.
So,
And I just, I'm better now that I've addressed certain anxiety issues within myself. As like, I'm medicated for anxiety now. I have done talk therapy for anxiety, but I would disassociate. Like, I would just, my consciousness would literally like come out of me, and it was like watching what was going on in second person. It was really very bizarre. So that occasionally, if I'm not, if I'm not exactly regulated, that still happens. But can you imagine that happening? Like, I think about when I was a kid and that happening, and it's scary. It's a scary sensation. And then when people asking you, well, what's wrong? What's this? Could just do this. Well, you're exactly right, Carissa.
yeah. Well, why don't you just tell me that you needed help?
Right.
Like, and so then think about, this makes me really, really curious about when we hear people say, yeah, but they're totally fine at school.
Mm-hmm.
Are they totally fine at school? Are they? Or are they shut down inside? Are they disassociating
Or
and they're driving through these motions
or highly masking.
or highly
Highly
masking?
masking.
And then you hear, well, they're totally fine at school, and then what happens when they get home?
They're done. And that's when you see the letdown. Their spoons they're done. And,
And
if they've been, if you think about a soda can that's just been shaken and shaken and shaken and shaken and shaken all day long with all of these expectations, and then coming home, that's when a lot of times we see that explosive behavior. It's like that the soda can is now open and it's been shaken all day, and what happens? You just
because
have
they've
this explosion.
because they finally made it
Mm-hmm.
to that safe place.
Right.
So before we knew that my son was autistic, and he was going to public school, he had zero supports, like absolutely zero. And I didn't know what was going on, but I knew that something wasn't right for him. Like it wasn't working, but I didn't know what wasn't working. And what would happen is he would be at school and he would be fine at school, which their definition of fine and mine, not quite the same, but he would get home, and the second he crossed the threshold into the house, immediately would just start crying.
Oh.
And so he couldn't tell me why he was crying. um, and he couldn't tell me what he needed. I didn't know either. And I would have to sort of just scoop him up. And he was a second grader, like early in the year for second grade. I would scoop him up and I would take him into my bedroom. We would close the door, and I would hold him, and we would sit on the floor or the bed, and he would cry and I would hold him. And it was like, well, he's fine at school, there's no problems. And then I would say, but you know, why does he get home? He can't function, he can barely talk, he can't eat, he can't use the bathroom, and he's just crying. And that's that dynamicness.
Right.
And that's also an extreme example of having a dynamic disability and not having the ability to get what you need in the world, and then falling to pieces.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is what eventually led to having him evaluated, and finally discovering he's autistic and selective mutism and all of this sensory overwhelm. And for us, for me and my situation, it also meant that due to the extreme dynamicness that he experiences in different environments, meant that we needed to home educate.
Mm-hmm.
And we had to make that shift, because based on the dynamicness of his disability, there's really no level of support that I could have put in place in a school system that would mean he could go through the day and come home and still have full ability.
Yeah.
And so if you can't see this as a dynamic disability, that his abilities are so influenced by all of these things that we're talking about, then you're going to have someone who is in distress all the time.
Right. Yep. Another component is neurofatigue, and I think we've talked a lot about this, just in our examples and a conversation. It's just that a decrease in focus because of your neurological fatigue. You may have difficulty with memory recall and word retrieval. We joke all the time in my house that I have the ability, I lose words. I just lose words. I'm trying to say what a farm is or something, and I say a place where they grow food. And it's that kind of thing. And it's just, we laugh about it in our house, but it's can be embarrassing too. I'm in a safe place in my house, but if if I'm out in the community and I can't think of the word farm, I mean, that's, yeah, can cause
So
problems.
think about if you were at school
Yeah.
and what that would be like. Imagine having that feeling, being at school, being a teenager in a social setting. Imagine the level of anxiety
You
that
just
you
wouldn't
would
talk.
have.
You wouldn't want to talk because you're afraid you might not be able to think of the word farm.
Right. And so being aware of the impact that something like neurofatigue has on a autistic person, that's where we talk about spoon theory all the
Mhm.
time, and why that is important, and why understanding how you spend energy, how you refuel energy is going to make a big difference on how you are going to be able to show up to whatever thing you're trying to do. So that means if I want to go out to dinner with my friends tonight, I'm not going to try and do a huge task early
Right.
in the day.
Right.
Or if I am, I'm going to be very intentional about making sure that I am rested up. Like, I have to literally let my brain
Yeah.
rest so that I can go out and do this other thing,
Right.
because it's very real for your brain to just be tired. And neural fatigue, like my brain being tired, is not the same as my
Mm-mm.
body being tired. Those are different.
Right. And then when we go out, we start, we've gone out and now we are in the world and we are communicating with neuronormative people. We're bringing in the concept of double empathy.
Oh my
And we did a
goodness.
podcast
Yes.
on double empathy, so I don't want to spend a
Yes.
lot of time on double empathy, but the the basically it is neurotypical people speak neurotypical language. Neurodivergent people speak neurodivergent language. It sounds the same, but it's not the same. And there are researched communication differences between neurotypical people and neurodivergent people. And historically, it has been on the onus of the neurodivergent person to fix up communication breakdowns.
Yes. Yes.
So, bringing that into the dynamicness of this disability. And then another one is burnout. And we've done a podcast on burnout as well. And autistic burnout is a syndrome conceptualized resulting from chronic life stress, and a mismatch of expectations and abilities without the adequate support or accommodations for an autistic person. And it's characterized by a pervasive long term, usually about 3 or more months, of exhaustion, loss of function, and reduced tolerance to stimulus.
Yes. And we're talking, it could be physical, but we're talking about, again, the neuro fatigue.
Right.
It's what are the demands placed on your brain, your cognitive. And that's not to say that all people don't have an experience of burnout, because yes, like you can, but autistic burnout, it is a thing. It's real.
Right.
I
And
would like,
it's deep.
yes,
And the only way to recover from autistic burnout is deep rest and long term rest.
yeah, that's changing expectations. That's supporting anxiety. That's supporting all of these things
Right.
that we've talked about. And yeah, we could go on forever about burnout, but
Check
it's
out our
real.
podcast earlier in the season.
Yes,
We did an autistic burnout podcast.
but it just it's so real, and it's not going to be fixed with a 2 week vacation
No,
or 3 or 4 days off from school. So
it's very long term. It's a very
yes.
long term recovery that requires a lot of accommodation. And we've also kind of to maybe put a period on this topic. You know, we've talked a lot about sensory overwhelm and how that can affect the dynamicness of autism being a disability. And, you know, it's just that being bombarded constantly with sensory input from your environment. And there's actually, I found a quote, and I don't, the quote is kind of from like one of those anonymous autistic person sources. But the quote is, if I get sensory overload, then I just shut down. You get what is known as fragmentation, and it's weird. It's like being tuned into 40 TV channels at one time. And I always like to add on top of that, if you're ADHD, like I am, it's like being tuned into 40 TV channels that are constantly changing, and somebody else has the remote control.
Mm-hmm.
You are not in control of those 40 channels.
Right, right. And that, like, neuro fatigue of, oh my gosh, my poor little baby bean cat is like all over. Sorry. But
We love it
trying
when
to,
Beans makes an appearance on the podcast.
I know,
We should call this Journeys with PDA Coffee Chat Podcast with Beans. Oh, because beans and coffee
yes,
beans.
yes. And
Sorry.
because Beans is always with me, but that, so this like trying to be able to process all of those, say 40 channels, right? All of these different sensory things takes so much energy out of your brain.
Mm-hmm.
And so then you are in that neuro fatigue, and you know, depending on the individual, that could start the anxiety, and then that's going to lead over into their go-to fight or flight response. And so often when a PDA has that meltdown, and maybe it's really big, and maybe it's really loud, and it goes into that again, like, I don't know why it happened, and we're forgetting that the sensory overwhelm is like, can be so big, and that can look, I'm just gonna cry and curl into a ball. That can also look like, I don't even know why everything is scrambled, and so you're asking me questions and I'm just gonna scream at you to get out of here. And why being in tune to what are their sensory needs can help us understand why do things come out like they do. And also, so because I'm a sensory avoider, I talk about that a lot, but sensory seeking is a huge piece as well. And so that means if your child was in the car for, you know, like, there's no magic minutes, but let's say they were in the car for 25 minutes because you live a little bit out of town, and then you get to the place, and they're agitated and frustrated. Well, maybe that's because they need to move. Maybe they're
Mm-hmm.
a sensory seeker, and so they've had to sit in that seat for so long, and their brain having to control their body in the car with not enough sensory input, and then they get out and they don't even know what to do with themselves. So before then you go into the store or wherever you're going, maybe they do need a couple minutes to run around the car, do jumping jacks, or, whatever it could be. So
Before they
also,
get plopped into that shopping cart and where they have to
but
sit still
yes,
again.
yes, before you're going to ask more of them, what is that sensory need? And so, yeah, maybe they just need to be outside for a few minutes. Maybe it's jumping jacks, or, so realizing that sensory is going to really impact how they're going to show up in wherever you're asking them to be.
Right. Yep. And then just, you might be listening to this and go, well, is there a quick and dirty way to align my parenting with supporting my child? And no, there's no quick and dirty way. There's nothing quick and dirty about any of this. But just, try to be as in tune to your child's tolerance level, and make sure that what you are asking of them is matching their tolerance level. If they are just done, please don't ask them to do more. And if they are in a place where they are, regulated and you feel that, then that's the time where you might be able to ask a little bit more of them.
Yeah. And just knowing these things, just knowing that abilities fluctuate,
Right.
and that is okay. And that we hear a lot about like regression. Well, is there regression, or are their abilities fluctuating?
Or are they just, or they just need a break. They
Absolutely.
just need a break.
Yeah.
And that you're going to see that regression, but that's not, they're healing. They're
Yeah,
healing.
exactly. And that goes into burnout as well,
Right.
is um, but just knowing that skills and ability fluctuates, and that's completely okay. There's nothing wrong with that. It's okay to have a fluctuation in your child's ability, in your ability, and that when you can understand that or accept that it does fluctuate and it changes and it's very dynamic, you can give so much more compassion and grace
Right.
to yourself, and to your kids. And that was one of the best things that I could do for myself, is just understanding and being like, it's completely fine that my brain is so worn out, and I'm actually going to watch cat videos for like an hour, and that is okay. And I didn't get the dishes done, but also I'm not piled on the floor crying. So, like, it's okay to have the fluctuations, and then it's okay to make accommodations and make changes in your life so that you don't have to go into that complete fight or flight distress. It's okay to take a nap.
Heather's learning that one.
Take a nap, lay
Yep.
down, rest, and thinking about what is it that your kid might need to make sure that their brain has all of the energy possible before asking something of them, and then what do they need after.
Right.
So when they come home from school, they probably need to go to their room, they need to chill out. You bring them a snack, check in I wonder if you had a chance to go pee yet.
Maybe help them out by unpacking their backpacks,
Yes.
going through their folders,
Yeah,
seeing
absolutely.
what needs to be done, XYZ. And you know what? If they are unable to do homework that night, there is nothing wrong with writing on that homework, unable to do it. And this is coming from a teacher. I taught for 17 and a half years, and put on there unable. That's data for the school. Or they were
Right.
only able to do this for 10 minutes. That is
Right.
data for the school, and it's okay.
It is
I'm
okay.
giving
And
you permission to do that.
it's okay to do less if that's what you need to keep your mind and your body and everything regulated. And when you can do more, go do more. And when you need less, do
Do
less.
less. Yep. It's all
So,
about that conservation.
yes.
We do have some downloadable resources on autism as a dynamic disability on our website, journeyswithpda.com, under the resource page. We also have resources on double empathy, autistic burnout. There's a lot of free resources on our website, so we invite you to check that out.
Yes, absolutely. And if you are listening to this as a podcast, we also have a YouTube channel because we want to make this information accessible to however you can take in info. So if you're watching this on YouTube, just know that we also have a podcast.
That's right. And if you're watching this on YouTube, please go ahead and like and subscribe to us. And if you are more of a listen to the podcast on your favorite platform, you can go ahead and set this up, Journeys with PDA Coffee Chat Podcast, on automatic download. And that kind of helps our algorithms out, and it helps us spread this message further.
Absolutely. And if you want to learn more about pathological demand avoidance autism profile, we have so much information on our website and on Facebook and Instagram.
That's right. And you can always email us at journeyswithpda@gmail.com.
Yes. All right. Thank you, Heather,
Thank
for
you,
sharing
Kerissa.
this fantastic information.
Thank you. Thank you for being here while I shared it. Thank you for sharing in my sharing.
Yes.
All right. Bye-bye, everybody. Take